Alcohol that's good for your brain?
I'm Greg.
I'm Julie, and we're the Crafty Winers.
There have been a lot of stories lately about possible benefits of pomegranate with Alzheimer's disease. So we thought, we've never done this before. Let's try making pomegranate wine.
Yeah, this is all new for you guys because you're used to seeing our normal Riesling and Merlot and Cabernet videos, and now we're gonna do pomegranate.
This might end up being wine, and this might end up being cider. We don't know yet because we've never done this before. So we'll learn together. This is Langer's all pomegranate, 100% juice, 9 pomegranates in every bottle. So we're using 4 bottles. How many pomegranates is that?
I don't know if I believe that because have you had a pomegranate? They're like, you
Not
cut
since
them
I
in,
was a kid.
well, you can see there, you cut them in half and they have all these little beads in them with a seed in the middle of them. And they're really difficult to eat. I can't imagine that much juice comes out of 9, but whatever.
Well, they're the experts, Langers.
And how do they get the seeds out of them? That's what I want to know.
It's a very time-consuming process,
Yeah.
one seed at a time, I'm sure is how they do it. So let's get started on this stuff. We've done quite a few things on Langers. We have not done anything with Langers on camera until now. It tastes like
Uh,
interesting.
It doesn't really smell like a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
Maybe a
I
raisin?
literally haven't had a pomegranate since I was a teenager or earlier, probably. So
Smells a little like raisin. Or prune. Prune
I
juice.
can see prune maybe.
That's what it is.
So as far as the ingredients, now that I've already poured it in there, according to the label, there is really nothing that we're worried about. It's all natural. There are no preservatives that we need to worry about. No preservatives that are listed at all. So, is it possible that there's something in here that is going to hurt fermentation? So it's possible, but they didn't list it on the label. So
Langer's seems to be pretty good about that, though.
her favorite that we've done with Langer's juice was
Oh,
a mango
yes.
coconut,
So
and we
good.
will do a video on that. But we ended up, it was good by itself, but we ended up carbonating it.
I haven't tried it since it was carbonated.
Well, whose fault is that?
Mine, apparently.
We force carbonated it,
Yep.
and I have tried it after it was carbonated, and it is very good. But it was good without the carbonation too. So I'm stopping here at 96 ounces. And then we have to have the discussion of what ABV we want this to be. I'm going to take my specific gravity reading, which if you don't know about specific gravities, I'll link our hydrometer video above.
It's hard to decide on the ABV on this because we're not sure if we're gonna keep it as a wine or make it a cider.
So my feeling is to shoot for 10 because that's not terribly low for a wine.
For a sweet wine.
It's not super, super high for a cider. It's high, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. We've had 10% wine. I can think of a Shinedown concert.
That was
Cider.
cider, yes. Let's not go into that.
Um,
I didn't know it was 10%.
and sometimes juices lose their flavor when you ferment them. So our fix for that has been to add the original juice back in as a sweetener and a flavorer. And 50-50 seems to be the proportion that works the best. And if we do that, it would take the 10% down to 5%, and that's still worth drinking.
Yeah,
So my feeling is 10% is the magic number, but
that's good. We'll shoot for that.
so we'll use our tool on craftywiners.com/tools.
Oh, I gotta get to it.
I stopped at 75% so that we have plenty of room for sugar without exceeding our gallon. Because exceeding our gallon when we go into a wide mouth jar that's exactly 1 gallon later, if we have more than a gallon, because of the sugar we added, we might have to pour some out, and that's always a pity.
Okay, so what are we?
Okay,
What
so
are we at?
using our calculate sugar to add to wine must tool on craftywiners.com/tools, she will plug in that our specific gravity right now is 1.066.
Okay.
And we want it
And
10%.
we'll do
It
10.
defaults to 10.5, but we're going to change that to 10. So the tool lets you calculate if you're taking concentrate and adding water to it. You can tell it what percentage you're at before you start adding water, and it will calculate what the specific gravity will be after you add the water. In this case, we're using 100% juice. We're not adding water to it. So you leave the, whatever that label says,
Vessel percentage
vessel
full.
percentage full. You leave that at 100%, which is the default. Again, the reason that you have that field there available to you is if this was concentrate and you're adding water to it, it projects what the gravity will be after you've added your 32 ounces of water. In this case, we're using 100%, 1 gallon of juice. So we leave that 100%. We don't change it to 75. So how much sugar is it telling us?
4.08 ounces or approximately 0.58 cups,
Okay, so
which is a weird number.
4 point what?
4.08 ounces.
Let's do 4.1 ounces. So we'll go a little over 10% because our scale doesn't go to 2 decimal places.
Oh, yeah.
So 4.1. This is really not very much sugar. There is a lot of sugar in this juice to start with, apparently.
Well, remember the Riesling? It wanted to take sugar out.
Well, we're not shooting for the highest ABV. I'm going to use my power tool to stir this up. The other thing about stopping at 96 ounces instead of 128 is that I can stir this pretty aggressively without it coming out the top. So I did that with the sugar. Now we're going to fill this all the way up with juice, and then I'll stir it a little bit more, but not as aggressively. Okay. So now we have a gallon of juice mixed with our sugar. So we will get our initial gravity, and we're expecting it to be a certain number.
Yes, we are.
It's a little foamy, so I'm dipping it up and down to get rid of some of the foam so that I can see the numbers. And if that doesn't work, I'll use a flashlight and read the numbers under the level of the liquid. If this happens to you, you can just be patient and wait for the foam to go down, but I'm not that kind of person.
No. That's why we just did a video on forced carbonation, right?
So we rounded up because our scale doesn't do 2 decimal points. And so we got a little bit higher. This is 1.080. So that's our initial gravity. So it'll be a little tiny bit higher than 10% just because we rounded our sugar amount. If you want it to be below, just round down and do 4 point. So you'd have to do 4
You just have to do
if you
4.
have the same problem with scale.
Yep.
Not an issue at all. So we had a discussion on whether or not we wanted to use pectic enzyme.
Which we don't have to, but I think we're going to.
This is really clear already. There's no fruit particles floating in it. There's probably not a reason to use it, but just for consistency with our other recipes, I think is why we're going to do that. So
it's just half a teaspoon of the pectic enzyme. Can you pour a little in here? I almost went and got the sucky thing.
AKA the baster.
We don't need it with the pitcher.
Links for all the stuff that we use are in the description. You can pour the pectic enzyme directly in here. A lot of times, though, especially with the pectic enzyme, it likes to float on the top. And then it's a challenge to try to get it to dissolve. It'll stay in clumps.
Yeah, I mean, you probably can't see, but there's little chunks of it floating around. It doesn't like to dissolve real easy.
It's better to do it in something like that. Make sure it's fairly well stirred up and then put it in and stir it up a little bit.
With your cute little mini whisk.
Yeah, you watch some of our older videos and the amount of equipment that we were able to eliminate because of using the measuring pitcher to mix in is pretty long
It's
list.
one of those light bulb moments, and you wonder why the heck weren't we doing this before?
I still catch myself trying to not use it because I am in the habit of not using it, of trying to mix in a carboy.
Yep. So much easier. Okay, that's pretty good. Go ahead and add that.
Okay, now we're going to check our pH, which I'm going to guess is going to be lower than we want it to be. Calibrated the pH yesterday.
So it should be perfect, right? It's operating perfectly.
The meter probably is close to perfect. The pH, however, is
Is
quite
not.
low at 3.36.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to want to raise it up to about 4.2-ish before we start our yeast, because yeast like it between 4 and 6 preferably. And the pH will naturally come back down again during the fermentation process.
So I guess I need to get the potassium bicarbonate.
I say that we probably want to start out with probably a full teaspoon, but I think maybe we'll do a half teaspoon to be safe.
I just happen to have a half teaspoon right here.
That's convenient. So we keep stuff in the little jars here to make it easy for us to do on camera. We're almost out. She mentioned something about it. We let these get completely out before we fill them back up, just to make sure that we don't have a bunch of expired product at the bottom.
We are starting with a half teaspoon of potassium bicarbonate.
Our standard measurement typically for potassium bicarbonate is a quarter teaspoon, but because we have a full point
Yeah.
to go up,
Ooh, look how foamy it gets.
yeah, this is it's so acidic that yeah, that's all that foam. I don't think I've ever
That's the
seen
foamiest
that
I've ever
much
seen
foam.
it.
So it's gonna be crazy when I pour this into the main mix. This would be without adding potassium bicarbonate or calcium carbonate or whatever to raise the pH. I'm going to guess that probably fermentation would be a hard thing to start in this. Just because of this.
Agreed.
If you ever added baking soda to vinegar, this is kind of what you'd see. Kind of slowly added it. I probably was a little hasty there, but I got lucky. I will be a little bit more careful when I start to stir this. My guess is that we're going to have to add at least another half teaspoon, but
It's likely.
it's now 3.3.
What the heck?
This is another teaspoon, which is a risky thing to do. I would recommend smaller amounts because if you go too far,
Then you have to undo
you
it.
might have to come back down depending on how too far
Whoa,
you went.
look at that.
Yeah,
Holy
so
moly.
look at that foam. It's good that I didn't have more than a quarter cup of must that I took out. That's crazy.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them foam like that before.
Trying to make sure I get all of the little particles.
I think this is probably the lowest pH juice we've done.
Yeah, very, very acidic. I don't want to change the basic taste of it. I assume pomegranate. We didn't taste it, but I'm assuming that it's supposed to be tart, quite tart. But I do want our yeast to succeed, so I care more about that at this point than I do the pomegranate.
Well, and we can add more back in later to add more flavor.
I'm going to be a little more careful this time. I don't want an explosion. So now we've added a teaspoon and a half of potassium bicarbonate.
And if we have to add more, we're going to have to refill the jar.
3.63.
Getting there.
So we need to add more. Brought out the main stash.
It's getting serious now.
So she's adding another full teaspoon.
Yep.
Again, I would recommend smaller amounts than what we're doing. But we still have a long ways to go.
We've had a little experience with this potassium bicarbonate, though, so. But yeah, when we first started doing it, we did it a quarter teaspoon at a time. Sometimes for a long time.
That one didn't foam up as much, so we've definitely made a dent in the acidity. The color's changed a little. Some of that's going to be because of the stirring has added some oxygen, but some of that is because of the potassium bicarbonate as well. 3.77.
My goodness. It's stubborn.
Okay, so our total teaspoon so far.
Hold on, let me do math. We did 1, 2, 3.5 so far.
3.5. And again, so the pH scale is
Logarithmic.
thank you. Which means that the number we were at, 3.2 something,
Yeah, 3.2.
was 10 times too low for the 4.2 that I wanted. So we had a lot of adjustment to gain. Look at all of that foam.
It just keeps getting foamier.
I don't know what base acid is in pomegranate. I don't know if it's citric or tartaric or malic or all of the above. Some of that we'll probably have to eventually add back in to taste. Okay, we're close now. We're at 4.03.
Cool.
We've turned this into a totally different liquid now. However, the yeast will thank us for it. So I'm going to rinse off my pH meter with tap water, and then I'm going to do a final rinse with distilled water, and then we'll continue. I don't want this to dry on my pH meter. Okay, so we're going to take out, we cleaned up a little, you'll notice. Going to put in about a quarter of this must. Do we have let's see the langers that we had left over. We have a little bit of langers left over from
Right here.
the fact that we put sugar in there.
It looks about the same.
Yeah. In my head, it seemed like it changed color, but it's pretty much the same. So we're going to add 2 teaspoons of Go Firm. If you don't have Go Firm, you can get by without using it, but it sure has made a difference in the consistency of our fermentations.
It's made a big difference, I think.
We will add Ferment. For this one, we're going to keep this one. This is a Fresco cider yeast that we're using, which does better, I think, at about 65 degrees, which means we're not using a carboy heater. And it also will mean the fermentation takes a little bit longer than our red wines that do keep at 77 degrees. Probably the 4th or 5th day, we will add a teaspoon of Ferment, and also we'll degas it using a food saver. You can also use a spoon. I'll oxygenate it using an aeration wand. And you can skip that as well. I just do it because I think it makes our product a little bit better. But probably do that on the 4th day since this is going to be about a 65-degree fermentation.
I guess typically, since we're kind of treating this like a white wine with the Fresco cider, swirling it is a good idea too.
Swirling it to try to degas it is a good idea. Swirling it does a degas and an oxygenation at the same time. If you want to swirl it, do that daily.
And it's kind of fun. I like swirling.
If you like swirling.
Okay, that looks pretty good.
So we're going to warm this up to around 85 degrees before we pitch the yeast. We're using Fresco cider yeast. And our normal, the beveragepeople.com supplier has been out of this for a while. So we went above them, and we're getting this big container for a fraction of the price that beveragepeople.com sells it. But this is a lot of yeast to go through because it expires.
Uh-oh.
Well, not till December 2025, but still, this is a lot of yeast.
That's a lot of yeast.
So we thought we'd show this. We will be moving this to a smaller container that's easier to handle. But yeah, if you've been using the beveragepeople.com for the Fresco cider yeast, which is a great yeast for fruity flavors and lower temperature fermentations. We really like this yeast.
Yeah, we do. We use it in all of our white wines.
Well, we've been
Almost all of
we've
our
been
white
using
wines.
Red Star.
Oh, I forgot
We've
about
been
that.
using some other ones, but
Yeah.
this is the one that, since we didn't know if this was going to be a cider or a wine, this makes sense because this is actually designed as a cider
For
wine.
cider.
This doesn't produce SO2 like a lot of wine yeasts. So we'll get this up to 85 degrees. We'll pitch about
Teaspoon?
teaspoon, maybe a healthy teaspoon of yeast, and then we will add this.
Okay, so I heated this up in the microwave for 8 seconds. Seems to be about perfect to get it up to about 85 degrees.
From room temperature.
Yeah, from room temperature.
So she's going to go ahead and add her about heaping teaspoon of Fresco cider yeast to the
A heaping teaspoon.
yeast starter measuring cup, and I'm going to fill up our carboy with our must, or whatever you call it when it's cider, our unfermented cider.
What do you call
wine / we don't know what it's going to be.
it? Hopefully it's going to be good, whatever it is. And then I'm just going to like lightly dunk this yeast just to get it kind of down in the must.
Everything was sanitized in our 2-gallon red pail with Star San. So what we're going to do is put this next to a heater for a couple of hours until it's really bubbly. Then we're going to add it to this carboy. We're going to put a blow-off tube and a stopper on this, and the blow-off tube is going to run into our 2-gallon Star San pail, which that'll create an airlock that will let CO2 out of here and not let bugs or other things that we don't want in our wine into the wine. So we will show this after about probably a week and a half has gone by and our fermentation has completed. We'll talk more about how we know it was completed. Okay, we're back. That was the 13th of June, and today is the 10th of July.
And in that month, we've had some adventures, haven't we?
I got sunburned.
Yep, a little bit. That was last weekend over the 4th of July. We went up north and stayed for a few days, and we went floating and floating twice, and then rafting one day, and we had a few fun experiences. Nori, the little one down there, she got on a paddleboard for the first time. We didn't put Pippin on the paddleboard this time. We're going to try that out a little bit later. We thought one at a time, but Nori did really good. She was liking it.
We found out she has automatic landing gear for water.
Yeah, so our son, she has a life jacket, a little pink polka dot life jacket, and it's got a handle on the back, so if they fall in the water, you can just snatch them out. And so he was picking her up by the life jacket and walking towards the river, and she just starts going like this.
Dog paddling.
She knows the water's coming, so she's just getting ready. It's really cute.
Hit the water running. And then whitewater rafting.
And you hit the water too.
I hit the water. I fell out of the raft.
Yeah, we were going through a rapid. Mixmaster? Yep, we hit a wall of water. The boat stopped and Greg didn't.
I kept going.
We got him though. He's fine.
So a little more brain damage maybe, but I'm fine. So again, the 13th of June is when we talked to you last. On the 18th of June, which was 5 days later, I degassed it for 3 minutes using my food saver. I added 1 teaspoon of Fermento, and then I oxygenated it or aerated it for 3 minutes using this contraption. If you haven't seen our video on oxygen and CO2 management, do so. This does help the fermentation go smoother and go drier, for better or worse. So I'm going to get this out of the way and we'll continue talking. For white wines on around the 11th day, I usually will add another 1/4 teaspoon of Fermento, but in this case, 11 days later, it was actually done. So I didn't add the fermento. As we said at the beginning of this, don't know how this is going to taste. We don't know if we want this to be a wine. We don't know if we want to carbonate it and make it a cider. So we're going to learn together. So we're going to go ahead and start racking this, which is transferring it from the primary fermenter into this storage vessel. Okay, so towards the end, I tip this a little bit to get as much of the liquid as I can. Don't want any of the lees, which is the sediment at the bottom. And out of abundance of caution and not wanting the lees, I think that's about all we're going to get. Julie says this looks like prune juice.
It does.
And it does.
I don't know what it's going to taste like, but...
If it tastes like prune juice, you're drinking it by yourself.
Okay, there's a little bit in there, but I don't think I can get it out.
We will clear this off.
Okay.
And be right back. We took a final gravity on this on
20-something?
24th. When we knew it was done. I mean, it had completely quit any activity. I took a gravity a couple days in a row and it didn't change. Here's the odd thing. The final gravity on this was 1.009, which for anything else you would think was a stall of some sort. So I did think it was some sort of a stall, but I tasted it. So I took a little sample out, and 1.009 of just about any other thing that I've tasted is 0.009 sugar, which is going to be...
Sweet.
It's going to be sweet. Is this sweet?
Well, I'm going to tell you in a second. Oh, nope.
Just to remind myself.
Oh, God, that's sour.
Yeah, it makes your jaws hurt.
Oh, man.
There is no sugar in this. So the conclusion I came to, this whole fermentation was a little bit weird. There was a ton of CO2. There was a lot of weird floaty stuff. This fermented like no other thing that I've fermented, even the Franken wines. So my conclusion is that there's something else that's floating in here that is not sugar, but affects the specific gravity, because there is no sugar.
Oop, no.
So we're not really going to be able to trust the ABV, because I believe all the sugar did ferment out, and whatever the 0.009 gravity that's in here is maybe...
With that...
Don't know. By the time I edit this, maybe I'll have figured it out, because I'll do some Googling, but there is no sugar in here.
If I use that final gravity, it comes out to 7.77 ABV.
Yeah, and we were wanting a little bit higher than that because we thought we would be able to split it, do a 50-50 mix of this and juice, and make it cider if we decided to go that route. Still have some ABV to deal with, but I really don't think we can trust the ABV that the calculation comes out to. I think it's higher. I can taste the alcohol, so that tells me it's probably a little higher than 7. But for right now, this is going to be a mystery, but we're going to focus on trying to make this taste good. Trust me, there is not sugar. The sugar fermented out.
Oh, heck
so
no.
I don't know what the 0.009
There's no sugar
is.
in there.
This is one of the sourest thing I've tasted. So that being said, we would normally put Kesasol, chitosan, and bentonite in to clear this. Don't really see a point. It looks very clear to me. It's dark, but there's nothing floating in it now.
It's clear in the glass.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's no sediment. I don't think that we need to waste that on this or waste the time on it. And whether or not we do the potassium metabisulfite and potassium sorbate, which will keep additional fermentation from starting, depends on whether or not we're going to add juice that has sugar in it, or if we're going to add a non-fermentable sugar that isn't going to restart fermentation.
I honestly think... I think we should go ahead and do this, because I think we're going to have to add juice, because there's not a whole lot of flavor either. It's just straight sour. We might have to do both.
That might change a little bit when it's sweeter, but I'm fine with that. Let's, just so that my curiosity is satisfied, let's do a pH real quick.
Yeah.
I want to know, we'll write this down. I'm wondering if some of the sour isn't because the pH is extremely low. And this
Sure tastes
pH
like it is.
tester was calibrated yesterday.
It tastes like somebody dumped a bunch of citric acid in it.
And that is not the case. The
Really?
pH is 4.13.
Holy moly.
So the sour is just sour. It must be pomegranate without sugar. Okay, this just changed, so we'll go with the lower or the later, in whichever case you want to look at it.
What is it?
4.08.
Okay. Which means to get it down, we would have to add more acid to it. And it's already sour.
Well, we would only want to lower the pH to make it shelf stable. If we were
That's
going to
true.
bottle it, it's already sour, so for taste, we don't need any of that
Yeah.
nonsense. Plus, whatever we add to it might change the pH more. So let's decide what it is we want to do. And I would suggest that we put about 50% of this with 50% juice and start from there to see how it tastes.
Do we have enough juice for 50-50?
We have a lot of juice. It's just we have one that's still open from the original batch.
Yeah, it's in the fridge.
And it's been open for a month now. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is the juice that was the remainder of what we put in here. And the best by date is July 25th of 25, so it's a year in the future. I mean, when it's open, that doesn't necessarily stay the case. The only reason I had any thoughts about maybe it not being good is just the little dark stuff in there, but I'm wondering if you are. This one hasn't been opened, but it's not terribly chilled because I didn't think about putting it in the fridge until about an hour ago.
Well,
So we don't know what this tastes like.
by itself.
So first thing, let's get an idea of what the juice itself tastes like. Guess we don't really need to do that.
Just pour it in.
And this, again, we've said it all over the video probably, but is Langer's all pomegranate, 100% juice. 9 pomegranates in every bottle.
Okay. Now I know where the sour is coming from.
Is it sour?
It's not as sour as that, but it is sour. But it has more flavor. But yeah, whew. Who drinks this?
I'm not a huge fan.
Me either.
No, it is sour. So the fruit itself is sour, and that's probably where this, and they say that they don't add sugar.
Yeah, I believe they don't add sugar.
Where did I see that?
Yeah, this is what they put in that. It's that Palm Wonderful stuff that's so popular. But they must put a whole lot of other fruits in there to balance that sour out.
Oh, okay. So on the back it says no sugar, sweeteners, or colors added.
Okay.
So this is just the natural fruit sugar that's in there, and yeah, it's sour. And I do remember that as a kid. Actually, it's been a long time since I ate a pomegranate, but
Yeah.
my mom used to put them in my lunches every once in a while, and I do remember that they were sour. They were just fun because there were these little beads.
Little beads.
So we're not going to end up with sweet, really, regardless of what we do. We can fix the fact that it doesn't have a lot of flavor.
With the juice.
But do you want to taste this again now to compare to this, as far as the flavor is concerned, or are you satisfied that it needs more flavor?
I think it needs more flavor, and then we're going to have to put allulose in it.
So we have this new jigger that goes from 0.5 ounces to 3 ounces that we just got because it's a lot nicer than what we were using for a jigger that only went up to 2. So what we can do is take what we haven't consumed here, raise that up to 0.5 ounces. And then I'll add 0.5 ounces of our concoction. And that gives us a 50-50 mix of the two. Do we have anything to stir this with? I can use the sucky thing.
That'll work.
But then it's going to have to be sanitized.
You can use this.
Let's use this. And we will pour it back into our glass. And so this is 50% fermented pomegranate and 50% non-fermented pomegranate. So we know it's going to have more flavor. It's not going to be much sweeter probably. And that will be, we really don't know the ABV. I am assuming that it went dry. It went to 1.000 as far as the sugar is concerned, and the 0.009 is something else that's in pomegranate. What would the ABV be if that was the case?
If it was...
Using our tool on craftywiners.com/tools.
If it was 1.000.
We started at what?
1.066.
And we don't know for a fact all of that was sugar either. This is really kind of just shooting in the dark. But
if it went to 1.000, it would be 8.92 ABV.
Okay, so almost 9. So 50-50, this is 4.5% alcohol. Let's just say that that's the truth. Okay. Even though we don't know for a fact that it is.
Okay, yep. It has a lot more flavor now.
Still pretty sour, I assume.
But yeah, it's sour. We can fix that with allulose.
If you like pomegranate, you would like this. It's a lot more like what this was. So this, and it's actually a little more complex.
You could, if you carbonated this just like it is right now, you know those sours that are popular at bars right now that I don't like? That's what this would be like.
Okay, so let's say that this is option number 1. Well, option number 1 is drink it like this. I think a lot of you will not do that. Take one drink and it's just too sour and there's not really enough flavor. Option 2, mix it with 50% of the juice and drink it like that. That's actually, if you like pomegranate juice or if you want the health effects, that's in a little alcohol, a little side benefit. That's probably a good way to go. Option 3 would be to carbonate it like that. Mm-hmm. And we have a forced carbonation video that you can watch. Well, there's some equipment you have to buy to do it, but it's not huge and you'll use it a lot. So then you can also sweeten this and drink it like that, or sweeten it and carbonate it. So you've got a lot of different things you can do. And again, the pomegranate juice is supposed to be good for mental health.
And other things.
It's got other good things. So the 4.5% alcohol, if that's what we're saying that this is just the side benefit of being healthy. So I don't know what we're going to do.
I think we sweeten it a bit and then carbonate it, call it a pomegranate cider.
So if you're going to sweeten it, actually, regardless of what you do, we shouldn't technically have done what we just did. We need to put our potassiums in because the sugar that is in this pomegranate juice can start fermenting again.
Well, we're not putting this back in. So
no, we'll go ahead and we'll drink this or do something with it. But we need to put the potassium metabisulfite and sorbate in here and let this sit 24 hours before we add juice or regular sugar. If you decide to go the method where you're just adding non-fermentable sugar to the juice and drinking it that way or carbonating it, you can skip the potassiums.
Yeah.
Because non-fermentable sugar isn't going to ferment. But again, if you put the juice in it, regardless of whether you carbonate it or not, you need to put the potassium sorbate and metabisulfite in here, let it sit 24 hours, and then add your juice. Measurements of the...
Yeah, so we put half a teaspoon of potassium sorbate and 1/16 teaspoon of potassium metabisulfite.
Even though we haven't 100% decided which route we're going to go, we can go ahead and do this. Yeah. So,
give me a little juice, or whatever you want to call that. Sour alcohol.
And that is sour with a capital S.
Yes, it is.
The original juice, you can see, was quite a bit darker than what this ended up. The juice is like a really, really dark brown, and the fermented version lightened up just a little, enough to look like prune, but...
I don't think even Lewis Litt would like that. Sorry, I was just making sure it was 1/16.
What did Lewis Litt? Lewis Litt was prunes.
Prunes, yeah.
from Suits.
Yeah. All right.
So again, you've got some different routes if you want to try this. This is good for you. It's very interesting. It's a conversation piece for sure.
Come over and try my pomegranate wine.
We will almost
Cider.
for sure end up force carbonating this. I just don't know. We'll probably do the 50-50 and then add a little sweetener to it and then force carbonate it.
I like a little bit of a tart cider, but not that tart.
Well, the 50-50 wasn't terrible.
No.
The 50-50 wasn't much different than
Straight.
the straight. So I stirred that in nice and thoroughly. You probably would also want to check the pH here to make sure that it was good for bottling, but honestly, this probably isn't really going to be bottled. It'll be put in the fermenter and then from there into some flip-top bottles that we'll drink quickly, so we aren't going to worry about lowering the pH to 3.8, which is what we would normally do.
Yeah.
That's just going to make it more sour.
Yeah, it will.
So yeah, this is an interesting one. I would recommend that you try it if you like pomegranate or if you like the benefits of pomegranate. If not, I would say don't waste your time.
I think it'll turn out as an interesting cider, at least.
Yeah. We do have a bunch of cider videos coming, so if you like that kind of stuff, stay tuned. We're going to be doing quite a few of those now that we've done our forced carbonation video. Another thing that we would normally do if this was a wine or anything but something we're going to probably carbonate is we would degas it using our degasser before we bottled it, but degassing takes out CO2. We're putting CO2 back into it, so that's pointless.
Counterproductive.
So it's only been a couple of days and we're back to show you how we finished this. We didn't do it exactly how we thought because of the way that it turned out.
What we did is we took the 50-50 option to start out with. So we mixed 50% of the pomegranate wine, for lack of a better term.
Fermented pomegranate juice.
Yeah. Then we added 50% of the original juice into it, and it was still kind of sour.
It had a lot more flavor. The flavor was better.
Yeah,
it was still really sour.
The flavor came back, so it kind of tasted like pomegranate, but it was still puckering sour. So
it's like sucking on a lemon.
Yes.
Pomegranate.
So we decided we were going to add a hybrid and also sweeten it, and we put in 2/3 cup sugar. And we were pretty happy with that sweetness level. It's still tart. It's not really sweet. It's still tart. But then we also decided to carbonate it.
So we tasted it, obviously, while we were testing the sugar level. Carbonating it always changes it. Yeah, see, it's fizzy.
This
has
fizzy.
been forced carbonating. If you haven't seen our forced carbonation video, I think I probably already linked it earlier, so you'll have to look it up because I can't link it twice. But carbonating it always will change the flavor in ways that we haven't quite learned to predict all the time yet. But we're hoping that carbonated this tastes better than what it did before we carbonated it. And it wasn't terrible when we left. The sweetness level made it a lot better.
It wasn't. It just seemed like it wasn't really something you'd want to drink as a wine. It just seemed like it needed something else. So we decided, let's just call it a pomegranate cider. And here we go.
We do use flip tops when we're not planning on storing these very long. So this is in a flip top. We go through a lot of flip tops.
Yeah,
we probably have 100 of them that we cycle through.
So cheers.
Cheers.
I think I do like it carbonated better.
It's still sour.
It's tart, but carbonating it was better.
I've had apple ciders that were this tart.
I have too. That plum one we had the other day was this tart.
And the second taste is not as tart. There is flavor for sure. It's not bad.
No, it really isn't.
Would you drink a whole bottle of it?
Well,
maybe.
Not in one sitting. I drink a glass of this.
It really does have flavor. So I'm going to say if you like pomegranate, you'll probably really like this as the carbonated form, the carbonated alcohol form.
And I 100%, I'm kind of a cider connoisseur. I love ciders, and I have never seen a pomegranate cider. So I think we created something new.
It's you're probably not going to have something like this unless you make it yourself.
So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video on pomegranate wine / cider, whatever you want to call it, whatever you do to it. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already subscribed, we thank you for your support. Until next time.